The little town of Petersburg, Indiana, a city within Washington Township and the county seat of Pike County in Indiana, has a population of about 2,383 people. That was at the 2010 census. But it is famous for several professional ball players that came out of there for baseball and basketball. If you listen to the rest of the story, you'll find out who those athletes were. Thank you. Loral John Wyatt became a professional baseball player for the Cleveland Indians. Born in Petersburg, Indiana, Pike County, on April 6, 1900. He went by the name Joe Wyatt. But his story didn't start there. Let's start at the beginning. Joe Wyatt was born to Hoosier natives Thomas J. and Willa A. Nelson. Joe was the middle of three boys. Nasby was born in 1897, and Fred, his other brother, was born in 1903. Thomas, his father, was a farmer in Pike County, Indiana, at the time of Joe's birth, but left the fields for a job as a weigh balls at a coal mine near Princeton, Indiana. The boys all attended Princeton schools, where they excelled at athletics. Nasby led the basketball team in scoring his senior year, and Joe duplicated that feat in his final season. Princeton did not have a baseball team for the high school, so the boys honed their baseball skills on the local summer teams. War came into Joe Wyatt's life, and after graduation, Joe was inducted into the infantry for the duration of the war. He makes no mention of his Hall of Fame questionnaire of combat or deployment. Following his discharge, he joined Nasby, working in a rubber factory in Akron, Ohio. Factory work was a short-term means of making money to attend college. Joe entered Wabash College in Crawfordsville, Indiana, where he played basketball and baseball. He joined Sigma Chi Fraternity and graduated with business degree in 1924. He hit over 300 as a freshman and a sophomore and played on championship teams in 1923 and 1924. He served as a captain of the squad his senior year and teamed up with his brother Fred in the outfield. The June 6 Cleveland Plain Dealer raved about Joe's talent as a hard-hitting fast outfielder. He made only one error his whole career at Wabash and hit over 500 his last two seasons. In fact, during a stretch in 1923, he went 17 for 26 at the plate. Joe was brought up to Cleveland after graduation and spent a week or two into the club learning the ropes, but seeing no action before he was sent to Kansas City in the Class AA American Association. Joe's first professional appearance was on July 1st, 1924 in St. Paul. He batted leadoff for Kansas City, going hitless and having no chance in center field. That was his only action with Kansas City before being returned to the Indians, who promptly sent him to Terre, Haute, Indiana on July 7. Joe played 61 games of the TOTS in the Class B league. He was recalled at the end of the season and saw action in 4 games with the Tribe. His first major league appearance was in a doubleheader in St. Louis on September 11. He went 0-2 in the first game and 2-5 in the second. He played again on September 12th versus the Browns, and then again in a home game versus the A's on September 13th. He played right field in all 4 games, and while Sumter Clark handled center field, when Joe went to the bench, Tom Gully was given his audition in right field. Eventually, Speaker inserted Riggs Stevenson in right field for the first of the year. Wyatt went to spring training with Cleveland and 8 other outfield candidates in 1925 at Lakeland, Florida. He showed a fine glove and a strong arm, but was optioned to Terre Haute on March 24th for more seasoning. He played in 128 games, hitting .308 with 13 homers. In mid-July, the Indians canceled the option on Joe. The Indianapolis Indians of the American Association purchased his contract just before the close of the III season. Joe played 14 games with them, mostly in left field. His bat was cool for the first few games, but from September 19th to the end of the season on the 27th, Joe hit a torrid 531, 17 for 32, with 4 doubles. Indianapolis welcomed him back to the 1926 season. On July 5th, he was acquired by the Columbus Senators, also in the American Association. Between the two teams, he saw action in 131 games, 95 as an outfielder, then some third base during August with Columbus. He hit .308 overall. In 1927, Joe was back in Indianapolis, where he was 4th outfielder, but was 2nd on the team, to Red Russell with 329. Average before he was sold to New Orleans in the Class A Southern Association. Suffering a demotion despite hitting well was tough on Joe. He struggled in 52 games with the Pelicans, hitting only 255. Fielded brilliantly and provided some timely hits as the Pelicans stormed back in the second half of the season. 11 games behind Birmingham on July 4th, New Orleans captured the permanent 5.5 games. The comeback earned the Pelicans a berth in the Dixie Series versus Wichita Falls. The series opened Wichita Falls before 15,000 fans in cool football-like weather. The Spudders won the pitchers' duel 2-0, with Joe getting the only long hit for the New Orleans and a double. Pelicans dropped the next 3 games with Wyatt seeing only a pitch hit appearance in Game 4. Joe was a no-show at spring training in 1928, and the Pelicans sold his contract to Decatur and the III League. New Orleans had invited 6 outfielders to camp. Decatur listed 10 on their roster. Now back in B-ball, chose to leave the game and find other ways of earning a living. He rejoined NASB in Akron to work in the rubber industry. By mid-May, he was starting outfielder in the Firestone Non-Skid, a crack industrial team. Firestones played in the AA Industrial League that included teams from Akron, Canton, Cleveland. And Joe had his finest game in the league in September 2nd when he banged out 3 triples, sacrificed fly, walked, and stole a base. Firestone went on to be the Ohio Industrial Champions and played in the National Baseball Federation AA Championship. They lost out to champion Indianapolis Power and Light. The Firestones played a more independent schedule in 1929 and did not fare as well. Joe made a few appearances in their lineup before moving back to Vincennes, Indiana. Wyatt was a gracious, outgoing person with a winning smile and personality, impressed the Firestone business people with more than his baseball talent. He was sent back to Vincennes, Indiana to run one of their stores. He was attending a Rotary meeting one day when a lovely young soprano from St. Mary's of the Woods was featured entertainment. Joe told those with him that he would marry that girl. True to his word, on February 11, 1933, Joe and Irma Josephine Kurtz were wed. Joe got a promotion and moved to Louisville, Kentucky as a regional troubleshooter for Firestone. The couple moved back to Vincennes in 1936 when Irma was pregnant because Joe wanted his children to be raised in a small town. The couple would have 3 children, Jay, Cyrilla, Joetta, and Kim. In the late 1930s, Joe left the employment of Firestone for a job with Texaco. He eventually became his own boss when he teamed up with NASB to find J&N Beverages Incorporated, located in Vincennes, Indiana. Joe was heavily involved in community baseball programs, sponsoring teams and managing youth teams. A lifelong Mason, he served as an officer and was involved in their community service projects. Wyatt was an avid hunter, especially liked tracking down grouse and pheasant. He went on hunting trips with friends when he was stricken with the Arctic aneurysm. Despite the best efforts of his companions to get him to the hospital, Joe succumbed. He is buried in Vincennes at Mount Calvary Cemetery. Irma eventually moved to Dallas, Texas area to be close to the children. She died there in 1997.